everybody, it's Kate Quinn. Welcome to Sew Steady's Facebook Live on Sundays with me, Kate Quinn. Today I have a plan for a project that I've been thinking on for quite a while. I have these amazing bathroom tiles, and every time I'm in the bathroom I look at them and I think, oh, those would make such a great quilt. So my plan is blocks, and then my plan will be to go ahead and sew them together. So it's definitely quilt as you go, friendly for newer users. The blocks that I'm starting with, this is about 22-inch square, give or take. So I just cut it off of some yardage that I had, but the finished size will probably be somewhere around 18. The block itself for today is 15 inches. And you'll see the alignment. I need to make some adjustments, so if you can let me know if your sound is good and you can see things well, I want to make sure I do that before we get into the meat and potatoes of everything. So if you can see well and things look good, can you just give me a thumbs up or a note so that I know you're out there? I don't have any cheering section on this side, so I can't really tell if people can hear. Hi, Linda Shell from New York. Hi, Marcia Carver. Welcome. Julie Chaplin. Great. Thank you, Julie. I appreciate the note. That was really helpful. All right. So here's where we're going. Can you see it? I'm reluctant to mess around with the computer too much because the camera is a little bit ornery. But there's the curvature right there. Doesn't that look so cool? And I'm going to show you how to do this shape as you go around. Essentially, we're making a little bit of a frame on the work, right? Maybe you can see it a little better there. It's going to create this dip in here, and you're going to get this curve. And the way you're going to travel is you're going to come back to this center line, the crosshair mark, and then you'll sew out and into this side. So the very first line is this one right here with the curly Qs. I'm using curly Q 11.5 wide, so I'll just put it up here for you to see. So if somebody asked me for a pattern, what am I going to say? I'm probably going to say no, but you can write these directions down. There's not a lot of steps to creating this. This is the 11.5 inch, and it has a wider curly Q. This is actually a 1.5 inch circle. If you took your 1.5 inch between the line circle or simple circle, it would match this shape. So there's lots of ways that we can do this. I like this curvature, and I think it's a really pretty shape. So we're using that, but you could use a smaller curly Q, you could use a shorter curly Q, and you can use the techniques that I'm sharing so that you can create it at whatever size that you want to create it. So somebody just mentioned that it is raining in Irving, so I made it out in time. I had come back this morning from Texas and I had all kinds of information about severe weather, so I was getting a little bit worried. Okay, and can you see this really good? Does that look good for you? Because I want it to look nice and bright so you can see everything. The thread is pretty light, okay, so hopefully you'll be able to see it well as we sew. And let me make sure I can see your comments really quick. All right, so I've got my live feed going, and hopefully I can see the comments. Okay, yeah, looks pretty good to me as well. All right, let's get started. No more chatting. The very first thing that we want to do is we're going to start with this end right here, and I want it to curl in towards the center of the block. So when I line it up, this mark is 2.5 inches from the corner. Okay, this square right here is a 15-inch square. So from my 15-inch square, I've got the 8-point crosshair, and I have my lines marked all the way out, extended to the edge of my 15-inch square. So that's the first step. Make the 15-inch square, then mark all the 8-point crosshair lines, each one of them, and extend them all the way to the outside border of the block. Then you're going to mark on the diagonals only from this corner in 2.5 inches. Okay? So those are the first 3 steps. Mark the square, mark the crosshair lines, and mark 2.5 inches in from the corner. You can review this and write those down later if you want to. Because this can flip over and we need it to flip over, notice that I have grips on both sides. Okay? So that'll be something, if you're going to try this technique, go ahead and put your grips on both sides. All right. So I'm just going to start with my foot in this mark that I've made on this diagonal. So this is going to help me have symmetry for this design, right? Just making sure that everybody stays in the right spot. I guess I could line up my needle first so I could see better. Foot down, needle down. We are coming back to this spot, so I don't need to tie these off right now. I'll just move them out of the way. Okay, pull this down, and here is the first placement direction for us to sew. Let's see if I can tip this a little bit better so you can see. I'm going to bring you guys down a little bit more on the camera angle so that you can see the angle right here a little better. Okay, so on this template, I want to touch at the 1/4 inch to get me in right there. Okay, so notice that this is a 1/4 inch, so it will not sew outside of the block. Right here, there's a space. And then same thing right down here, there is this 1/4 inch right there. And I'm going to sew right through there. I guess I need to come up just slightly. Let's make sure. Okay, I think we're good. So let's go ahead. My hands are wide and flat. This is a large template, and that's going to make it so that I don't have to switch my hand position in the middle of the design. Now, I don't want to close that. I don't want to come off of the edge of the ruler, so just kind of get close. It won't matter if they're exactly perfectly the same. So here, I'm trying to kind of come to where this center mark is on this template. It's on an angle, but basically I want to be on this line, right? So that I can now flip it over and do the other side. I'm going to mirror it. So in order to mirror it, I have to take it off and I have to flip it over, put it back on. So for this, there is a lot of flipping going on. Oh, wait a minute, wrong direction. Flip it this way. Ah, did you see that? I almost messed up. It happens. So I should technically have the same 1/4 inch right here. I want to be close. So maybe a little smushing is good if necessary. And getting this right on the corner, 1/4 inch right here. Down here, I should be able to perfectly line up into the little mark that I made at that 2.5. But notice that I have to go this way first. So somebody asked, what was the tool? I'm going to go ahead and specify again. This is the Spin FX Curly Q's number 11.5W, and that's because it has this wider shape. So right now we're looking for a 1/4 inch right there, and making sure that as this comes in, it's aligned on that dot that we made. So we're going to sew in this way and come around and to the dot. Okay? So put the curly Q in this way. You can kind of see where you're going. It should not overlap, and it should touch right down at the bottom where we marked it and bring us right over to that diagonal so we end in the dot. Okay? All right. So let me just show you what we got so far. I think it looks cute. This is what we have just to start out with right there. And it's going to look, better as we add more in. This is only one side of the unit, so we have quite a few more to go. So one thing I noticed is that, fabric moves around. Maybe I marked things crazy. If things don't line up perfectly, just give them a little gentle smush. Nothing really drastic because we don't want it to buckle, but we do want to get into that center position, and we do want to touch sort of on this outside boundary. pretty close. So a little smushing is okay. Coming around, don't go too far, tacking back and stopping in the center of the loop. So we know that this is, as we said, this 1.5 inch circle. So you're basically trying to stop, right at this half of there so you can match it up on the other side. All right, so flip it over. And I want the curl to go in, so I'll put that side in first. And then turning that. So let's talk about how did I decide what size that I needed, right? I put this on and I tilted this until I could have a 1/4 inch right here so I could touch, and so I could touch on the diagonal. And then I measured that. And I tried to make it, maybe it's a little odd number, but look, I can push this just slightly if I need to widen this, or I can take up a little bit more. That allows me to adjust this position all along that, but we still want to try to be basically in the center there and come around. So I think that we look pretty good right now. I think I'm going to come down just slightly right here so we can get a nice fit on the bottom. So here, gently tacking back around, trying to keep the template from moving during that time. That'll give us a nice clean curve as we go across that area that we'd already stitched. Okay, needle stops, and then we need to flip it over. So we want a curl to go inside, and we'll position it again. So I'll kind of leave it here. It's a hard angle for me to see from this angle, but I think it might be better for you. So maybe a little smush right there is needed just to get that in there. The quilt's going to draw up anyway, so I'm not really worried about just a little tiny push and pull right there. You guys know I smush a lot, so. Coming around, not too far, and trying to come right back to the center, right on this straight line right there, okay? Because this design is a little big, I think we might have to bring our camera out a little bit later. Let's see if we can come back a little further so you can get a little bit better angle on it. Where are you putting the pressure to move the fabric? That's a question that I just got. So if you don't have a curly Q, that's okay. You can use a curve and a circle, right? Or you could just use a curve. Maybe you won't have that curly Q. Okay, so let's see if we can get that camera to focus back again. It looks a little dark for the moment. All right, and I think we can give you just a little better view that way, a little bit more of the whole piece. So right here, we're gonna line that up, put that right at the center as best we can, and then angle this so we can get our 1/4 on both sides. So I'm just gonna shift a little bit so I can get that 1/4 inch, and I'm right on the 1/4 inch over here. Right now, as I come on this side, I'm pushing down right here, and I'm sort of pushing the whole fabric in that direction. Okay, then as I come back to the other side, I'm right on this side, and I'm actually going to push away from myself almost straight ahead, straight that way. Notice right here I've got my thumb on the edge of the template. I like to use these edge markers as a little bit of a leverage point. So it's quite often you'll see that I use my thumb right on the edge just because there's a little bit more to hold on to right there. So I really appreciate that little bit of a ledge there to give me that push and pull. Okay, flip it over and we'll line it back up. All right, so again, using those same markers, we want to get into the center and have the 1/4 inch on the inside and on the bottom. We really want both of those. So just maybe a little bit of adjustment just to make sure we can get in there nicely. So my hand is wide. I don't want to sew on this side. Make sure that you stay on this fully closed side of your curly Q. Okay, and we'll come back around to the center position, right there, right in that middle. So a lot of flippy-do, right? We don't care about that. It's working. One of the things I like about the curly cues is that they're really, really easy to move in and out. So I don't mind switching them because I can just take them on and off on my domestic. It's great. So we'll line up this last one. This one is going to be even more important to line up than the rest because this one is the very last one. So if I can't quite get everybody lined up the way I want to, what I can do is let's sew this top portion, okay? And this is the bottom of the circle about right there. So what I'm going to do from there is I'll take just a slight adjustment right there. I just pulled this down ever so slightly to make sure that I could meet at the bottom because the bottom wasn't perfectly seated right where it needed to be, and now it is. So that part of the circle is a really good place to make that kind of adjustment. And I'm right where I need to be now. So let's see, can you see the boundaries now of the design? It kind of creates this flowy shape right there. And then we have this. If you did this with Templee, you could cut this part away and this would be the frame and this would be a shape. And I also have an idea how we can put a little echo in here as well. So that way you could maybe cut this little ribbon out and then have the pinks on these two sides. I'll show you that part maybe at the end if we ditch around this based on time, but I want to show you the inner portions of the design before we move along. Okay, since we started right here, let's go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and tack this a little bit. So with this design, we are going to have to move around a little bit, start and stop, go ahead and tack things off. So I did about 5 stitches in place, and then I picked up my presser foot and I moved my sandwich away to lengthen my bobbin thread. This is my top thread that I'm holding, and I'm going to go ahead and needle down and up, and that will pick up my bobbin thread, which is right there. Because I've tacked those stitches, now I can go ahead and cut that thread off. Okay? All right. Now, before we do the next step, I want to put in some markings that are going to help us make this next area a little easier. So we have a little dip right here, a cute little dip, and we're going to do something. Donna, I saw that you just commented this size right here of this SpinFX, this is a 1.5 inch circle, and I'll prove it to you. Okay, I have my between the lines circles, and we're going to use those also. And I think this is the 1.5, and if I line these up together, see that those are the same? That's how I knew that it was the same. I knew it was a circle, but I wasn't positive of the exact size. So sometimes if you have some of these other tools, like even if you had a 2 and you knew that the 2 was slightly bigger, then you could estimate. Because most of these are a basic size. She's not making circles that are like, 1 5/16, whatever. Usually most of her things are some standard measure. And this one is as well. Okay. So what I want to do now is I want to put a little pagoda of circles that's lined up right in this area. So since this is 1.5, and I don't want to dip in too far, I'm not going to use this one. I'm going to use these 3 between the line circles. This is the 1 inch, the 1/2 inch, and the 1/4 inch. So we'll get a little gentle gradient of our circles. And because circles can be a little tricky, I think, I can't really connect this one to this one. Let's sew these 3 in a chain, which means we'll have to change them. And then we'll move over to the next one and we'll sew the next one. And I hope you don't mind, but we'll have to sew them all. Otherwise, the flow of our design won't fit all the way. So I hope you will be patient just as we put these in. I guess I could have done them before, but... So right here, let's check our position. What I want is I want my foot to be in the existing stitch line right there. I don't want to cut into the circle below, so I'm going to position my foot first, and then I'll seat the template, okay? So let's put that right in there. Okay, I can see the line, so let's get these threads out of here so they're not in our way. And I think I dropped my spacing gauge again. Yes, I did. So I have to climb down off my high horse to get it, right? Okay, so let me show you. We're going to use the center line, and then we may need to make an adjustment right there slightly to make sure that we're not going to cut into the other circle. So we're trying to line it up, but these are not perfectly lined up exactly. I mean, they're close, but they may be slightly off. So respond to the existing design, okay? Don't just say, oh, this is lined up, this is how it goes. Use your tool, and let's make that circle, okay? And I want to stop at the top on the center line, okay? The reason for that is this is nested then right into these two. And when I'm on the center line here, then I'm ready to move up to the next circle. So let's go ahead and change circle sizes. All right, I'm going to scroll down. Boy, you guys have a lot of comments today. Great. I'm trying to respond. Let me kind of scroll down so we can see. Can I show the original? Betty, I will in just a minute. Let's go ahead. I can't really like shift all of this. Let's finish this. And then when we shift over, I'll bring the design back in. The design isn't complete. I mean, I basically did enough to make sure that I could make it, that it would work. So it's not completely fleshed out. So I'm not sure in that sense if it would be 100% helpful or not. So I do always make my little pull tabs on here. I can tell I really need to clean my templates off because they are getting hard to see. There's stickiness on them, tape. Okay, so between the lines has a perfect center line. I can line it up super easy. So because we're stacking these, we're going 1.5. Okay, so come back up to this half marker, line your needle up right in that center position. And I think mine's pretty good. I can see that it is on the center line there. So I'm actually going to kind of leave these here and not put the tape back on completely because I'm just going to have to pull it off in a second. So I'm going to just try and leave them on the pink so that I can visualize everything and make sure that I got a good view. So this one doesn't want to fit in there. These are a little bit big for this, so I'm going to bring my needle up so I can lift that all the way, and then I'll put my needle right back down. Foot, and then needle. Okay. Oh, I just messed up my tape, darn it. Okay, here we go. He curled up on himself, and I couldn't get him aligned. All right, right in the center, there's a little mark. This guy is so tiny. Here's what I recommend. Just sew faster, okay, with the little tiny guy. He's hard to make a little tiny circle. All right, so we're done with this one, and then I'll just move to the next one, and we'll just keep on going. We do want to go ahead and cut this thread. We don't want it to be lingering. We're finished with it, so let's just cut it. All right, get my scissors. So I have to tell you guys I was in Las Colinas and Irving, Texas this past week, and I got to hang out with Donnell a little bit. She was busy though, she was in class and I was down on the floor, but we at least got to say hello. And she taught some great classes, and so many of the students came down to say hello, which was really, really fun. So let's turn this, and what do you think? Do you like that? Isn't that cute? I just love it. So let's go ahead and do the rest of them. We'll try to do it a little bit more quickly so we can kind of get through these. Don't skip your tape though. That's super important. My tape on these is actually fraying right now, so I'm gonna have to probably get some more tape to make sure they don't get crazy. Put this on, then gently kind of align it as best you can, get that visual quarter. This is helping me to figure out where does my foot need to go so that I have that 1/4 inch. So I'm just gonna push that right up. It's lined up on the center. So this first one is pretty important to make sure that we won't cut into the circle below. Once we have that first one done, then we're pretty good. So I'll put the needle down. We're gonna sew around. I'll just pull these threads out of my way so I don't cut in. And we'll get to the top right there. Okay. I saw somebody was asking about cleaning my rulers. I have not done that in a really long time. I just try to use a mild soap, like dish soap. You don't really want to use something like alcohol on them because that really has the potential to be etching the surface. So I'm just going to use something mild and probably just use a little bit of elbow grease, I think, to take care of that. Okay, so again, lining it up right on the center. I've lined up the front and the back, and we'll sew around and then get back to the top so we can do the last one. So right there at the center, and then tape off. I pretty much use something like Dawn or something like that. Nothing caustic. Very gentle soap would be best, I think. And this one is a little ornery, we have found. So I'm going to use my knee lift and just gently, not disturb the thread or anything, get this right into the center. And then I can put the needle right back down. Just because it's so small, there's just barely enough room for it to fit. So then center it up again. Use your crosshair marks. This is aligned right on the center. And this one is just really tiny, so just sew a little bit faster for that one. I think it works better if you sew a little bit faster. It's such a small area that you need stitches to happen more speedily. Otherwise, you have trouble moving around the circle. It just doesn't go, I think. Okay. All right, we're doing good so far. I think my scissors is right here. All right, now I'm going to take a second and see if there are any questions. Okay. We definitely have a lot of comments coming. I have no possibility of being able to see all of those. Somebody asked if I'm going to be at Garden of the Quilts. I am not. I'm actually at another event, so I will not be able to be at Garden of the Quilts. I would love to go. It sounds really beautiful. So we're just going to keep moving around. I've got these stacked up, and we'll just line this up each way so we can kind of get the foot in there. I guess I don't need to take that off for this one. Just leave it on. Okay, I'm lined up in the center, and I'm just going to scoot this down until I can get the foot in there, and then I'll push back. I want to be right in that circle right there in the existing stitch line, and then pulling up my bobbin. Okay. All right, just hold these so we can line up everybody and get a good start. Okay, and then we'll take that one off. I think I'll go ahead and I'll just cut these right now so they're out of the way. I'm getting some thread buildup over here on my desk. All right, next one. Oh, wrong one. All right. So why am I putting these in here? Just because. Purpose is art for art's sake, right? I just thought they looked cool. They added a little elegance, kind of has an impact like it's beaded. You don't have to put these in there, you know, if you don't want to. If that's too much stuff going on, You can leave it off, but I think, you know, I want to quilt as much as I can. I want to quilt the tar out of it. That's my goal. So knee lift, sliding this right in underneath. Try not to move anything. Once the foot's down, get your needle in place, and then you can line this up. Okay, and pushing that up to the foot and aligning it right on the center line in all directions. So a little bit faster for these little guys. Okay. Okay. All right, so far so good. So let me show you something real quick. I don't feel the need to point out my problems, but we're in a learning mode, so I am going to show you. So what happened on this one is I aligned this side really well, but I didn't double check this one. This one is very close. I would not take that out. However, next time I need to bring that spacing gauge into play and check this side. So even if the circle is a little bit pushed up, as long as it's touching here, I want that. I think that's important. So we need to use that spacing gauge there and make sure that we get both sides aligned. Because remember, these may or may not be lined up perfectly. Okay. Let's see. Last one. Nope. Now I have keys everywhere. All right, so I'm going to put this on and we will do what I said this time. We'll make sure that both of these are lined up properly using the spacing gauge. Okay, so that tool is valuable. It's powerful. It helps us make our designs as precise as we want to. So let's go ahead and we'll pick up here and we'll set the foot in on that position, and then I will double check the other side and make sure that we're properly aligned. So my needle is right there. We'll cross over these threads so they will get tacked in, so we'll just leave them over there. I'm going to push this all the way up, and then I'm going to check with my spacing gauge right over here on this other one and make sure that we are properly aligned for 1/4 inch. So I'm going to rotate it just so you can see. So right now it looks like it is too tight. So I'm just going to shift the circle slightly, just a little bit, so it'll touch right at the 1/4 inch. There it already is because we've already put it into position, okay? So this should be better than the last one that we did. Okay, and then we'll come right up to the center, stopping right at the top. So I'll answer another question that I sometimes get asked, and I think some people that have watched for a while, they already know the answer. Would I actually do this on a quilt? You bet I would. I would just quilt some more and quilt some more and quilt some more. I don't mind that. I find it actually very relaxing to quilt and definitely very relaxing to use templates, and I want the design that I want. You know, I know that some people don't. I know they just want the quilt finished, and that's okay. If that's your goal and you want something different, then you just pick a simpler design and you can have that, and it's going to look great, and I'm sure it'll be fine. But I want to play with it. I want to use the templates more. I want to put more detail in the design, and that also translates into more learning opportunities for you guys as well. So, okay, here's our last one, and then we'll be done. The reason that we are putting all of this detail in here is I want to use these circles as references for the next layer. Okay, so get that aligned, and we'll put the tape on. Okay, and get this lined right up. I guess we'll use this direction. I can see it a little bit better on the back. So one last little tiny purl, go fast, and just really keep the edge of the template along that circle because it's a very small movement. I will tell you, if you go back and see my videos, you'll see I don't use this little tiny 1/4 inch very much. And the reason for that is I find it hard to sew. It's so small that it's difficult for me to move around, and I don't like it. That doesn't mean that I won't use it. It just means that I need to be really pressured into it, I guess. So even I have stuff that I, don't prefer. I like the circles to be a little bigger. I would say that probably my favorite size pearl is the 1/2-inch pearl. But everybody gets to pick their own. That's why we have lots of choices. So I'm going to cut that. I got a little thread hanging out right there. So we'll cut him as well. And we'll just get all these off. Now I'm going to go back. Betty Briscoe asked me, could I share the detail design? And yes, I will pull that up really quickly and just comment on that. And then we'll move on to the next piece. And I'll use that to orient you to where we're going next as well. Okay? Don't lose this guy. I'm going to clip him back on. We're going to need him in a few minutes, but he wanders off, so I'm clipping him on. So right now, I'll kind of turn it this way so you can kind of see what we've got as far as this wedge right here. So Meta was asking, couldn't I just leave the needle down and raise the presser foot for the smaller circle? I did try that. I tried that the very first time and it wouldn't work. That is so tight, and I'm also using my long arm ones on this. Let's see, where's the tiny one? Right there. That the foot takes up a lot of this space, right? And then I just couldn't edge that out. There's not enough room to shift this over. That's why I had to lift up the needle so the foot could elevate, because there's just not enough room. You may find that you have enough room. I just didn't. So different machines may respond differently. I don't know, but just on this one, that wasn't possible. So I lifted up the needle. All right, so back to our picture. So you can tell I did some, different things. I was playing with it. Betty, I totally wish there was a 3/4. I want that. I don't know why they won't make that. Or, 1 3/4 circle too for the smaller circles, because I'd like that graduation, but I can't quite get it just yet. So anyway, this is where we're kind of going. We're going to create this wedge. So we've done this line right here, and we've done this part. And now I want to put in these arcs, and we can actually travel around the circle to the other side if we want to. So that's kind of what we're going to do right now. Why didn't I just use the circle and then make the arc and then travel around? I felt like this would be cleaner, and once the circle is in place, then I can go to the other side to align the arc. So there's probably different ways to do this, but I felt like this was going to give me the prettiest little pendant portion right there. So that's why I chose to do it that way. Okay, let's get out some arc. You can use whatever arc that you have, whatever arc fits. I'm going to use this one, and what I want to do is put it on here with my spacing gauge, and I want to get to the middle of these circles right there, right? So I'm looking to be 1/4 inch. I vaguely am aligning this in the center, but it's more important that I touch at the correct place than that I'm aligned at the center. A slight adjustment on the curve is not going to matter, but if I'm not touching where I need to be, then I can't connect these lines, okay? Yeah, so Betty, I talked about that at the beginning. I have these amazing tiles in my bathroom and in my laundry room, and this is an idea that is a takeoff of one of those. So let's go ahead and get our foot seated first. We've measured this right here, and we can double check it with the foot as well. We sort of want to be right at the halfway mark of the circle, and that's going to be the governing part of this design as we go along, okay? All right, and I'm pretty much at the center position, so we did a good job. Anytime that I can keep that, that means that things are symmetrical. So I'm in the middle of this one, I'm right on the center, and I can just go right over to the next one. So again, my hand is kind of wide. If that's uncomfortable, you can just focus. As long as we have some pressure behind the foot and in front, then you can just use your hand not quite so wide as mine was. So remember, we're orienting towards the center of that circle. That's what we're looking for. And that's going to help us sort of make a swoop around there. And it's going to allow us to be a little smoother. If you cannot sew around the circle, You can take the key out of your 1.5 inch circle and you can use that as a guide and sew around, right? Because this is your circle. You can just put it back on, leave the tape off, and just align it to get around that other side. And then each time as we go around, same thing. We're going to try to align right at the 1/4 inch so we can get to the other side. So I'm going to try and line it up with this edge of this touching that ruler flush. Okay, so making sure that we don't have it canted, otherwise we're not going to get a nice, good, perfect fit. This class starts at 3 o'clock Mountain Time. Okay, so if you're comfortable going around to the other side, now you have a reference. Just slowly, carefully stitch around. If you're not, put your ruler back on and you can use the ruler to stitch around, and you're basically going half the distance. Okay, so we'll just keep going and adding that in. It's starting to look, you know, more and more sumptuous. Lots of arcs and curves and a really, really fun design. All right, I think we're pretty good. Lined right up, and here we go. On this curve, we don't want to try to stop in the middle. You really want to hit it smoothly. Don't do half of this and then the other half. Try to complete this section all in one movement, because that's really going to give you the best look. Since we have to kind of come around here a little bit, I'm actually going to go right in the middle of that little gap just to fill it in, because I can, right? We have that little gap where we had a little split between those two. So I'm on this other side, and we'll go ahead and add in the last bit. So there's only 4 lines here, and we're basically going just from the circle, from the largest circle, right at its midpoint to the largest circle. And we're using our spacing gauge to be sure that we can get everything aligned just perfectly. Okay, so here we go. Here's the last one. And I cannot see as well as I'd like to, so I'm going to look over the camera. Oh, perfect. We got right in there. So this is what you're getting. I'll kind of turn it this way so we can see a little bit more of it. You're getting this kind of a shape in here, and we're actually going to echo that. So let's go up one more. We're going to go up to the next circle. And what I want is I want to put 2 spaces on my arc, and I'm going to create an echo on the top. So I'm going to, oh, did I do it on the bottom? Let me see. Oh, yeah, I'm not sure. Oh, well, it's fine. We're just going to go with it. If we need to adjust, we will. So I'm going to line this up, and basically I want 2 spaces right here. So if I need to adjust on the ruler, it looks like I have to come out on this circle. So I'm going to come out to the middle of the next circle and just go around until I have enough room for my ruler. Maybe one more stitch, I think. So this is going to end up right about the top of the little circle. I can actually see that it's going to fit perfectly right over here too. So you're going to go from circle to circle. Let me show you. Okay, so we're lined up pretty much right at the bottom, and it's going to fit right at the bottom of this one as well. And because that next one up is so small, it'll just kind of glaze right past it. So you can see another reason why those little circles are in here now. So if I wanted to put that echo in, it might be a little bit difficult for me to travel. But because I have these little friends now, they're making it super easy for me to travel. So it's just something simple like that that's accenting the design a little bit is really having also a practical function of helping me put this echo in now and move around. Let's make sure I don't clip that. Could not be any tighter right there. So I'm just going to go around the circle here, maybe 1 or 2 stitches on that other side, and we'll do the next one. Okay, just getting it lined up. It's fitting really well. I'm going to check my 1/4 inch on this side, make sure that he's got enough room there, and just adjust the ruler if I need to. A tiny adjustment to get me right to the top of that other side. Okay, so I'm in that bottom circle, and then I'll just come around to the other side and just come out about 2 stitches. I'm looking right here to see how much space, because this is approximately how much space we need to be 2. And if I've gone too far, I can just take 1 stitch backwards right on the line. There's already enough thread right there, so it won't matter. Nobody will be able to tell. So let's go ahead and check this next side with our spacing gauge. Make sure we're going to come in just perfect, which we are. And holding this, I'm just going to push the entire sandwich. I'm not going to rotate along the curve, like turn it like this. I want this whole sandwich to go in that direction, down on that angle. Okay, and then we're right into the circle right there, and we'll just go ahead and do a little tacking off. There's already quite a bit of thread there anyway, so it'll be an easy place to hide. Okay. Ooh, I'm liking it, you guys. Looks cool. All right, let's cut some threads. All right, let me do a quick snip, and then I'll just review real quick and see if there's any questions from people. Yeah, curly Qs make a really, really pretty frame. If you're using the BSR, should you use more stitches per inch for the smaller circle? Good question, Jillian. Yes, I think so. Anytime that you're micro quilting, I would bump that number up a little bit, because if you have, say, 12 stitches per inch, consider that this is only a 1/4 inch, right? So you're not moving very much. So you would hardly get any stitches, and then the circle doesn't look very round. So I would bump it up just a little bit when you're doing those smaller circles. I agree. I think that's a good idea. Well, Kathy, I'm glad you found this to be motivating so that you can go ahead and use your curly Q if you have it. Let's see. Okay, let me scroll down a little bit. Oh, Linda, I'm so glad that you like the design. I realize you might have to come back later, but that's why we have it available. Okay, let me go down. Can I use long arm templates on a high shank machine or high shank templates on a long arm? Okay, Pat, my machine has enough clearance that I can use long arm templates on my domestic. And I'm using my Janome right now, in case you cannot tell. I'm using a Janome 9450. So if you have a high-end Janome, like a 9450, a 9400, a M7, or an M17, there is a lot of clearance on the ruler foot back here, a lot of room. So it's very easy. If you have a Bernina number 72 foot, there's also a lot of clearance on that foot. So if you're using that on your domestic machine, you can use a long arm ruler on those machines. But I have another brand on my Baby Lock, which is high shank. And if I try to put my long arm rulers on my Baby Lock, they bind up. So if you already have a high shank ruler and a long arm ruler, I would test it first before you buy any more and make sure. Not all high shank machines can accommodate a long arm ruler, but some can. And it's machine dependent. It's all about the clearance at the back of the foot. How much room does this foot have behind there? Can I use my long arm rulers or not? So that's something that I definitely recommend people test, especially if they need those long arms for their long arm, because on your long arm, you definitely want the fat rulers. Don't be using anything skinny on your long arm, only 1/4 inch thick rulers. On the long arm, the foot is lifting up and coming down. When I'm sewing on my domestic and my foot is down, This foot is not moving, it's staying level, but the long arm foot is actually coming up and coming down. So as it lifts, if you're using a skinny ruler, then that can go right under that foot. And that is where that comment comes from. On your domestic machine, you should not have your ruler ever going under your foot, no matter what thickness it is, unless you just have positioned your ruler foot completely improperly. So hopefully that answers that question. Let's see, we'll go down a bit. Yeah, solid color. So I definitely wanted the design to be the highlight of this. I do think this design could definitely be Templee. So for example, right here, this is a closed area. So if you had Templee, you could cut that and have a band of color there. And my plan is to put another band here so that there would be the potential to have Templee over on this side as well. At this point, this section is done. So now I can just do one of the designs that I want to go in this area. So my plan for this area is to put this inner arc in here, and we're going to template it first with chalk, and you'll see why in just a minute. And then we're going to fill it with some feathers, okay? Let me show you the design really quick first, and I'll talk about why I want to do it in a certain order. Okay, I want to try to put all of this part in and this part all at the same time. So I have to think about my path. I'm gonna answer one more question before we get started on this. I'm sorry to be jumping around. Somebody just asked, what are the different thicknesses of rulers? A low shank ruler is 3 millimeters. A high shank ruler is 4.5 millimeters, and the typical elevation on a long arm is 5 millimeters, right? So the 6 millimeter 1/4 inch ruler is thicker than that elevation, which is why it is a 1/4 inch. So 3 millimeters for low shank, 4.5 for high shank, and 6 millimeters for the long arm rulers, which are also 1/4 inch thick. Okay, so hopefully that answers that, and it's all about clearance. The low shank foot has very little clearance around the back of the foot, so you have to use those low shank rulers on a low shank foot, on a low shank machine. On this high shank machine, there's more clearance, so I can use a long arm ruler. High shank ruler. I can also use possibly the low shank ruler on here because there's no clearance problem, right? It's not going to go under, we already said, and there's no problem using it at the back because it's skinnier. But it's when you go the opposite way, like a fatter ruler, it would bind up too much here. So if I use low shank on a high shank, it's fine. But if I use high shank on a low shank, it's not as good. And then if I use my long arm on my high shank, I could also get some binding right back here. Okay, all right, let's go back to design. We want to talk about path. So I've kind of drawn this out, and I'm going to put an arc in here to fill up this gap. But notice that I've connected my curlicues. So I want to come in and I want to come back. So in order to do that, I want these to be the same. So I want to mark a space, and I can determine what that space is, but I want it to dip in a little because I like this. So I want to keep that idea that I'm going to dip in a little bit. So this is about a 1 inch, maybe 1 1/4. Let's see if we can get our measuring tool, which I thought I had here. Oh, here it is. I found it. Sorry, I was wandering around thinking I had it. All right, let's just double check. But again, this is a random rule, okay? You get to pick. So this is right about 1 inch. So from this position, this is what we're measuring, where we're gonna match up. This is the one that we already have right there, and that's the 1 inch. So I'm gonna go ahead and just mark that on all 4 of those sections. And that will be where we're stitching to in order to close those areas. let's go back one more time. I got to show you one more thing. So when I do that, I need to start and put these arcs in here, and then we'll start sewing from here and we'll close the arc afterwards. That way we can do it in a continuous fashion. So let's do the marking part first. I can put my spacing gauge on there. That's a pretty easy way to mark. So I'll just put it on the line and they'll all be the same. And I'll just put a little dash right there, right across this crosshair line. Okay, so this is the importance of marking. Don't skip it. It makes things so much easier, I think, and it lets you get the design that you want. In this way, I can line this right up. All these are going to have the same spacing, and it'll make it a lot easier for us to create the design that we want to create. Okay, so our line, we're going to use that same 12-inch arc that we had before, and we're going to go from this position to there, and from there to there. This is not bigger than a 12-inch arc, right? It's actually smaller. This amount of space is no bigger than a 12-inch arc, so I can just lay this anywhere. It doesn't have to be positioned in an overly specific way. All right, we need our little stitching line discs, right? We want to always use them just to make sure that everything is going to look exactly how we would want it if we were stitching it. We're going to be using this mark right here as our spine for our feather. So we definitely want to make sure that it's a good line. So let me check that position as well. Okay. And then align that with that spacing gauge. Okay. Okay, so I want to get right to that center position. So we'll mark that. That's going to give us our spine line. Okay. And I like that it kind of beefs up this whole look. You know, I love this shape, but now we've got this whole fatter kind of a line there that's going to give it a little bit more edginess. So we don't have to do all of these. I'll just do one of them. Okay. And I want to get my 1/4 inch right there. Okay. So this is going to be the reference line that we're going to use, and I just want to make sure that we kind of start right down in the point, because that's where we're going to start sewing, is right there. So I'm going to put an arc, and it doesn't have to come all the way to the top. I don't need to crowd this, so what I'll do is I'll go basically a 1/4 inch away from that, and I'll plan all of my feathers to match up with that as well. So let's talk about which arc should we use. So let's put these on there. This would be where my needle is, and if I use this one, I'm not going to get very much value. Do you see that this one is really flat for this type of space? So I have the 6-inch arc, and that's going to cut in quite a bit more, plus the foot will give us this 1/4 inch right there. So just by auditioning that, I can see that I need a bigger arc in order to get some value there for the design that I'm trying to do. All right, get my needle right in position. And let's see, I'll turn it towards you so we can do that planning and you guys can see it a little bit better as well. So real quick, I'm going to just go over the templates. So if you want to write these down, somebody's asking which ones are being used. So the first one that we used was the Spin FX Curly Q 11.5W. Okay, so that's this one out here. Then I used the between the lines circles, and I used a 1 inch, 1/2 inch, and a 1/4 inch. These are all from the between the lines. You could use a different circle or only one circle. If you just have a 2 inch, you could just put a 2 inch circle right there and forget all the rest of these and just let it be what it is, and then just make your arcs a little flatter. It's totally up to what you have at home and what you want to do, but that's what's used right here. Both of these arcs are created with the 12-inch arc, the full size arc. Could you create them with the 12-inch arc? You can, but it's more difficult. You would have to line up the arc here in the center and estimate where it was going to come in because it's not long enough to go all the way. So if that were the case, you might want to come to the center and then align to the other side, and that would be an option if you just want to use the 12-inch arc. So that's not a million templates that we've used. 12-inch arc, the 3 between the lines, and the curly Q, and that's it so far. The next one that we're planning to use is this 6-inch arc. This can be found by itself. It's also available in the Flower Power set that Ann Moore has curated. And you can also use the 6-inch spiral because the 6-inch spiral is the same shape right here. So if you wanted to use that from your sampler set, you could also use that in this case. Right now, what I want to do is I basically want to kind of keep this line sort of perpendicular to that center line and push it up until I have the 1/4 inch right there. Remember we said we don't want to come all the way up. So right there is my little 1/4 inch space right there. Okay. And I would mark that on the other ones when I go around as well. Okay. So let's just come back a little ways. We'll touch the center. And now I'm just going to come down a little ways. If I needed a way to measure that so that I could repeat it, I could just maybe use this 1-inch mark from the top. This would be a random rule, and you basically would make whatever decision you want. The reason I'm coming back down is the feathers are going to start now. So I'm just going to set this aside. I'm only using this to make this, and I'll need it when I come back on this side. But we're going to feather out to the edge, and then we'll stitch back to the center, and then we'll do this side, and we'll stitch back to the center. And all of those stitch lines then will be filled in. Okay, feather time. So this is kind of a big space, so I think we're going to need the bigger ones. So I'll just pull out those 4 and 5 for the moment and just start with the biggest one because this space is pretty large. This is the stop position. When we come down with our feather, this chalk line is the end, right? So don't go past that. That is the stop zone, okay? We came down a little bit so that we could align that feather, and if we make this touch the stitch line up here, then it's going to stitch a 1/4 inch away. So right away, I can use that as the guard and then make sure I have my 1/4 inch down here. I need to be able to turn this so I can get right to this bottom position and have enough room to touch that spine. So right there, I'm just opening it enough to get that 1/4 inch, and I'm right above this nose on this template. Okay, so we're lined up at the top, and here we go. So touch the chalk line, and I'm going to come back up to the top. Now, I want you to see this is the center of the lobe. Because this angles down, I probably want to come just a little further down, about right there. That'll be something you could play with, and you could put your own arrows on your feathers if you wanted to repeat that on the other side. I'm just going to go with it, and however it looks is however it looks. So touch that spine right there, and then I only have room for maybe a little tiny feather. And in fact, I'm just going to make a little arc. I don't think I want to crowd that. It's only 2, but look at how much space. There's not a lot. So when I drew it, I probably estimated a little poorly. So I'm just going to arc over to this spot, and then we'll put this curve right in. Okay, we'll go ahead and we'll use that 12-inch arc. And just to keep it kind of the same, I'll put the center of it right at the needle and just measure with my spacing gauge. That'll get me over there and get a little bit of a flat arc, but it'll let me connect right up to the curly Q. Okay, now we can align our 12-inch arc, and we can close it and get to the center. Let's turn it so you can see. Oh, I don't know. Next time I think we will go ahead and arc right into there with a feather. I think it's going to look better. I don't like that. I think it looks like a mistake, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. All right, let's go ahead and put this on. Right now, you're going to use your spacing gauge to align and follow the feather and get yourself right into that center position. Okay, we're back at the center, and I'm going to make a little line right here across the top just so I can see where the other feather is hitting. I don't have to make it perfect, but that'll give me an idea if it's symmetrical on some level. Okay, so we'll just draw a little chalk line, and I'm not overly confined by that, but that'll help us position that first feather. Okay, so we're using that 6-inch arc. Let's see if we can use this inside and connect the dot there. Yeah, there we go. The inside and the outside of this arc are basically the same. Okay, that's one of the things I love about them. So I'm going to try to come down approximately to the same spot, and then I can start my feathers on this other side. So let's start with the big one, and then let's make the other two a little smaller. That way we'll have a little bit more room for that last feather. So when I put it on, I'll show you again what we're looking for. I'm pulling it down so it's touching this line up here. And then I see right on this side, I don't necessarily have enough room to avoid my chalk line on the bottom. Here's that chalk line that we made. I can't quite get this position so I can stitch into it. So I'm going to have to open it up a little bit. So let me show you what that looks like. Right there. I'll tip that just a little bit. And then that's going to get me that 1/4 inch just above the Pope's nose right there. Okay, and then that's a 1/4 inch pretty much, so I think it's going to be perfect on that side as well. Let's just make sure I've got the right size. Yes, I do. Okay, touch that chalk line, and then you're going to come back up to the top and maybe a little, not as far, just like we said, you could put your arrow there. And now that we have this really pretty big one, let's actually put in some smaller ones, because I want to try to fit 3 in there. So we're just going to make this a little smaller. So I'm touching up at the top, and I'm going to open this so I can have that 1/4 inch right there. And we'll sew that one around. Touch the line and back up. Maybe one more stitch. And then turn this. Now he cannot fit all the way in there. So let's see if we can short him just a little bit. I want to clip that area right there. I think we can do it. Perfect. Okay. Now, let me show you what we've got to do. We still want to connect up to the top there. So we want to go backwards with our 12-inch arc and close that up. I'll do it this side. I think we'll be able to see a little better this way. Okay, line it up with your spacing gauge. You're going to close these all up. So that's the right curve, but I want to go backwards to close up my little curly Q right there, and then come into the center. Pull these out of the way so I can see my center. And then we'll just tack right along that and tack those in place. Oh, I like that even better. Don't you think that looks better than this side? I definitely do. So we learned something. So in this one, I would leave this feather in. I would rip from here, take this one out, and then I'll just put those 2 in, and this will connect right up without any problem. We'll be able to just clip it right into there. So that'll fix that without any trouble. That's a very easy fix. And we're designing on the fly, right? We decided that something didn't look right, and we go ahead and we're going to make the adjustment and make it better. So if it doesn't look good and you don't like it, don't just keep going. Change it. It's okay. All right, let's go down to the bottom, see what people are saying. Random rule. Yeah, if it's random, you're in charge of those rules, right? I could do this and it would probably look fine. It would actually create like maybe a little diamond aspect on there, but I actually like this one better. So you decide. And again, if you're doing Templee, the potential would be here to make a little narrower little leaf in here, and then you could cut this away and you could maybe do something in here. This is a circle, and you could use the feather and arc down, so you could create a wider piece on this if you wanted to do Templee. And because this is closed, this section has the potential to be completely cut away. And if you'll see right here, this does also. This whole frame right here, if we did it this way, we could cut this away also. So that could also be an option for Templee. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll do the last part. It's 4:10 and we have really just enough time, I think, to do the last part. So the last part is I want something in this area. It's wider here and it's narrower here. And so I think a good option here is the Spinifex number 11, which is one of my personal favorites for Spinifex. In order to find out what is going to fit here, we need to do a little measuring first. So let's grab a ruler and we'll measure. To the center, it's 4.5 from this position to the center. So the 7.5 is going to fit. Let's see, the 9.5 will not. So we need that 7. So we'll grab that out. And of course, you can always audition it. Obviously, we're not doing it this way, although I suppose we could, but we're not. We want it to go like this. And I like that this skinny area is going to fill down towards the bead. So I think this is a really great fit. We're only going to put 4 of them in. They will cross over right here, but I think that's enough to put that little decoration in there. So with the Spinifex, let's go ahead and just put the ruler on this position first, then line up the needle right in the center, and then we'll pull this out. Okay, and put this down. Now, I don't promise to do my tile series in order, but I do have several of these tiles in my brain. So as I get the inspiration finished, then I will go ahead and add these in. Can you guys not hear me anymore? Somebody said that they can't hear the chat. So if you cannot hear, let me put a note in there. All right. So I'm just checking to make sure people can hear. Okay, great. Lorraine, thank you so much. I appreciate you. Okay, so let's put this last bit in. I like that this is definitely got this kind of curvy thing, so I feel like it'll be a nice flow with this design. So let's go ahead and do it. So this is a Spinifex. It's very easy to use our 8-point crosshair. Notice that I'm holding on these 4 quadrants. These grips are activated by my fingers. When I start the next one, I want you to look at the center. Make sure that when you line it up, your needle's actually at the center. Like, take a quick check real quick and make sure that your needle isn't a little off to the side. Check that you're aligned right here. You can also check right there. These should kind of stitch right down on one another. There's not a lot of overlap here. I guess there is a little bit. Definitely not a lot, but a little bit. Okay, so I'm lined up. As I go, just keeping that center needle position. So again, with that Templee, there's a little overlap. I don't know that I want to try to cut that center. So if you were trying to do this and you wanted that as a Templee piece, I think you'd be smart to fill that in with thread rather than trying to cut that little sliver. You could actually come in there and just go back and forth with your colored thread. And that would help fill that in. Here's the last bit. This is the last one. We're right at the center, and we'll just put a few tacking stitches right down the existing stitch line. All right, let's go ahead and cut that. All right, I love that. So it's helping create some balance. Because it is a little smaller, we get another layer of that echo. So again, you have that potential for Templee in here and in here. And again, I would not try Templeeing these little tiny wedges right here in the center. If you were interested in that, it's too tiny. I would just put thread in there, right? Just color that in. All right, so let me go ahead and we'll flip it over. And let's see if we can see the feathers on the back without any marking. Okay. So, right, there you go. And again, we didn't push this up. We left that as a little space on purpose so we get that puff right here. We didn't try to crowd that. And then we have these nice little finishes. And it down here really creates a little finished look. Let me do one last thing. We'll just do it on this one side. Because these touch right here on the boundary of the block, I want to show you how you can use your curly Q and make a little additional frame on there. Let's see where he went. There he is. Okay. So it's not a perfect fit, so I want you to know that. So this is the curly Q. I could shift it down a little bit, but I need to be careful that I have enough room to get back. It's not a perfect fit. So what I want to do is I'm going to push it down and scoot it over. And here's why I have to scoot it over. I need this bottom area to be able to touch the center line, right? So let's make sure we have that. And then we'll just mark that position. Okay, so I'm just going to mark that with a dot right there. And then what I would do is I would measure that so that when I go around and I do the other sides, that this is the same measurement. Okay, so let me show you. We're going to lay this on there and try to use this line a little bit to get us aligned. And right here, we can choose a certain amount of distance. Again, this is not a perfect match. It's going to be more like a ribbon. So just get your center position, and then on this side, you want a little gap. Don't try to do that with the 1/4 inch. Leave it a little wide, and then just start your foot down. And then wherever that aligns, basically right here, you could put a little arrow where it's touching right there, and that could be your marker. Okay? Since this is a square, we're starting in the ditch line, basically. Okay, because we're going bigger, it's not going to perfectly echo. So I'm going to put a few tacking stitches right here and then just come into this center position. Right to that center line. This is a really great way to see how powerful it is to use those stitching line discs and to play with your chalk lines. All of these crosshair square marks really have made this possible. Okay, we were down at the end right here, and we want about that finger width, and we have a 1/4 inch right here. This is over the line a little bit, and that's what we're using. This part right here is over a 1/4 inch. So this is a little bit more than a 1/2 inch, and it's going to grade from the center and be a little wider out here. Okay, now, right now I'm in the ditch, and I can travel down the ditch, and I know that I need to be about right here. I'll position for the next one and do the next one, and I could go all the way around, and this could be continuous for this little ribbon. So I'll just put a few stitches in here right now just to close this and just tack it so we can kind of get the idea. I do have a little extra room on the outside of this, and so I thought I probably will put something in the border, but I haven't figured that out yet. Okay, let's cut that and then we'll show you the rest, the last bit. Okay, and that one's not tied off, so we'll leave that alone because he's not stitched in on that side. But there's a little bit more, and of course we can do more in here if we wanted to, or we can just leave it, or we can create a bigger echo. You know, if you wanted to make that bigger, you can push that Spinifex up a little further. We only had a 1/4 inch right there that was overlapping, so basically at the widest part it's about 1/2 inch, but you can push that down, or you can move this line down further, and that can be a little bit of a wider border area. So I just thought that that looked so cool, and I thought it would make a really great looking tile. So that's what I'm going to do. I'll finish that up, I'll ditch around here, and I'm leaving this space so I can join it to the other tiles. I just don't know how they're going to be joined yet, so I haven't decided on that. Okay, I hope you guys had fun today. Let me see any last comments there that are coming up. I hope you guys enjoyed it and thought that that was a very fun and unique design. I know that that's not a quilted block, but the techniques are powerful. You can make a frame. You can feather a triangle. You can create these different arcs. This shape right here with these double arcs around this Spinifex, I think looks bomb. It's my favorite. I think this really accentuates this center design, and it has a lot of potential for Templee because there's a lot of crossover stitching. And then of course your little, you know, pagoda right there with its little beaded detail, I think is very, very cute. So feel free to go ahead and do any of those things. You don't have to use them the way that I did, but you can take those little pieces and use them in your own way, however works best for you in your design. Okay, thank you guys so much. I'll go back later. We are heading out to dinner for a birthday for a kid, so I'll go back later and check on it, but it may take me a couple of days. I have a really busy week. I'm teaching almost every day, so I will try to respond to any questions I didn't get to. Happy quilting and have a lovely, lovely week. Be safe and have fun. Be creative. Bye-bye.